In this brief video, we're going to explore why China is not as, shouldn't be as comfortable as it is, thinking that it's going to keep on progressing, making products for America and for the rest of the world. If you look at the number of chips inside complex products such as the iPhone or the iPad or the iMac, and you compare the number of chips, the number of parts inside the board today from 5 years ago and from 10 years ago, say on the iMacs, you will find that the number of parts has been reduced tremendously. I mean, it's getting to the point now where the next iPhone, say the iPhone coming in on 13, is going to have one or two chips. Today, the iPhone has about 10 chips. The last one before that had about 50 chips. So let me ask you, what is the labor component of putting two chips on a board, especially if a machine's putting them there? And then, there's the labor of putting the board inside a case. I make an electronic gizmo that used to have over 100 parts, and then the next generation of it with surface-mounted chips has about 15 parts. It's still made in China, but, with robots and the like, I sometimes wonder, why is it that we cannot have a robot put 15 chips on a board? Where's the labor part of that? In addition, I have found that the Chinese have a very, very poor rudimentary English, and they don't communicate well at all with American, or rather the designers of this stuff. I mean, I think anybody would agree that 99% of all code, programs, and innovations are still, from the America and Israel kind of countries. But then it's the Chinese that are willing to work for 50 cents or $1 an hour. And they work great. I have no doubt that we're never going to be able to compete with China that way. But if technology is getting to the point where the number of parts inside things is going down from 100 to 10, and from 10 to 2, at one point, the labor component becomes not the driving factor, especially considering the travel, the gasoline, and the delay, and the customs from China to Western countries. I've also found that the creativity shown by the Chinese is really low. At no point, after making electronics in China for 17 years, have my Chinese factories proposed one enhancement, one change, nothing. Yes, once they have the design in hand, they will be very crafty as to how to cut corners in order to save money and so on. But in terms of on their own, to take on creativity and so on, no. What do we have here? We have technology from electronics that is moving at a very fast pace. I mean, if you look at the speed of processors, it's doubling every 2 years. And the number of chips required to do things is halving every 2 years. So if we look at China in 2020, as opposed to today in 2011, we're going to find that probably 90% of what they're making now is going to have one chip inside the product. And I submit to you that to put one chip on a board, in fact, to make the board with the chip on it, and then to put it in a case, and today even, Apple laptops have 100 screws, 200 screws. There's no need to have a design with 200 screws. And you see those changes in the new products. They are learning, and they are simplifying things. And for example, the new iPad 2 compared to the iPad 1, the iPad 1 was a machined piece of aluminum, whereas the iPad 2 is a stamped piece of aluminum. They're cutting costs again and making things simpler. Where does that bring us? China, I think, has had its heyday because the amount of labor is related to the number of parts of something. For example, the Toyota Corolla and Camry, which are bestsellers. Those parts, the engine has about 160 parts. But some American engines at the same time, would have not 160 parts, but more like 500 to 800 parts. So Toyota's simplicity, of course, made a better product. Even Rolex, one of the reasons why they're tried and true is very simple design. I submit to you that when the number of parts in products goes beyond a certain level, the amount of labor that is needed is less of a variable. And because of that, I see that the United States is going to once again regain manufacturing because the manufacturing will be simpler, because the electronics will be much simpler. And from a mechanical perspective, there will always be, of course, there's only one way to make a vacuum cleaner or a grass cutter. You got to have a lot of parts. But the more you simplify, the more other countries pick up the slack, like India, so on. There's less and less for the Chinese to do. And at one point, the design, especially in electronics, becomes, why are we making it in China? I mean, it's got one part. Can a machine make it here in the US? And that will happen. And that is why the United States, which still accounts for like 99% of all inventions, is going to reign supreme and be by far the number one economy, because we've got the innovation, we've got the creativity, we've got the programmers, and they don't. They are simply nowhere near what it takes in terms of software, creativity, and innovation, and so on. And these are true words that I believe.